Welcome back to another round of Blind Guardian Talking. It's great to have you all here, and we have one very unexpected but very special guest, Dirk Buscher, our very best back today roadie.
Long time ago.
Long time ago.
So Dirk, we heard that you also were in the studio during the Imaginations from the Other Side recordings. So
Yes.
what do you recall?
Me and my friends, just a lot of times we spent time in their studio just from the first time on. And so I remember it was in Copenhagen, and it was a great experience to be there at was it Enania, the whole Tivoli and whatever, just like sightseeing and hanging around with those guys, watching TV, playing computer games and what stuff ever.
And helped us to kill the booze.
Yes, yes.
Something we would never do at home.
No, never. What was the experience?
We had that luxurious apartment in the middle of Copenhagen, and you know there was all the nightlife and great restaurants. So we had a lot of fun. But for most of the time, we really spent the time in the studio
Yes.
or in the apartment. So we went out, but we with our friends we had so much fun. We didn't need anyone else. So
It was like when we arrived in the studio, we started working, but after a month, you are so isolated in the studio when you work. You only have the bandmates and the producer to talk to, but after some weeks, you are really happy if you see another face, and it was a relief when our friends visited and we could talk to someone else, and maybe for the mind it was a relaxing thing for us, refreshing to continue, because if you are only stuck in a studio, you would get that studio color, I don't know.
And get all the praise. Wow, you're so great.
It was one time. Sometimes it was. But it was also like.
They never said something like that. You know?
Well, it was always a party. Just a few of you guys just went to have some recordings, and like Hansi was out, and then we make some funs with them, and after that another one had to go for recordings, and so we have always get an entertainer for ourselves and maybe for them also.
Yeah, they got some good stories. So.
I was told that you started to know the guys in the band because you were a fan yourself. You started hanging around, I think around the songwriting period for Tales already.
Yes, just
earlier,
right
Even before. So you had followed them for a couple of years. So how did you experience the vibe and the song material from Imaginations when you were visiting the studio? Did you feel that, wow, this will be something special?
Yes, we was hanging around with friends. We was hanging around in the rehearsal room for a long time before. And if you can hear them rehearsal, it's very like basic. You just hear two guitars and hear some vocals and then the drum kit. And when you go to the studio and they say, okay, we have now something you can hear. It's like some recordings, and you hear so much more. It's like a huge other stuff you get there. You know, when they play for live gigs, it's more basic. And if you hear the recordings on CD or on LP, it was LP before that, and you hear so much more musics and sounds and melodics in it. And so it was always, oh, what's going on? You know the songs before, you heard them, but you need time to recognize them again. And so it was always a huge experience to hear what's going on in a sound studio. Normal people never get that.
So was it a natural development for you to ask your friends when you started touring? So who shall be the crew? Now let's ask our friends that used to party with us.
We always wanted to have people around us that we like, because you know you don't want an idiot on tour that's hanging around with you all day long. So We knew they were playing instruments as well. Dirk was my guitar tech for all those years. He played guitar, and so the thing was, can you tune a guitar? Yep, okay. Here's my
Can you
own-
carry a guitar? Okay.
Yeah, you know how to set up an
Refused to
amplifier.
do that many times.
And it was the same with all our crew. They were all our friends that, luckily enough, were playing instruments themselves. And we said, okay, you're the road crew. You come with us. We tour the world and have fun. And
Yeah, it was the easiest way.
Yeah.
You see the world for free, and we don't have to pay you.
Yeah, that was a deal. That was a deal. Just we had a lot of fun.
Drinks
That was
on
a-
us.
That was the main deal.
Which
had
was
a
a bad
lot of
deal for
fun.
us after a while.
Laughing and had 1 or 2 beers on the tour, but it was a deal for me, for
Per
example.
tour or per hour?
Yes,
And
sometimes.
the
But
funny thing is, I laughed so hard when I heard that story later on, when they couldn't come on tour with us anymore because they had their jobs and whatever, and we had a professional crew that was working for other bands as well when they were not on tour with us. They talked to us about our old crew and the kind of legendary status that they had in the crew scene, because they were obviously only working for us. They were our friends and they were on tour with us and nobody else knew them. They had legendary status in the crew scene. Oh, that's one of the Blind Guardian crew guys. Oh. And, you know, so they were really special. They had a high ranking within the crew scene for
we
whatever.
spend time on tour and after that we go back to
they
school.
can afford to only
Yeah.
to work for one band.
Yeah, normal bands can't afford those specialists. You know, they are so superb and it
I
was,
mean, with good hockey players, for
yeah,
example.
that's,
But you survived, and you know all the shows took place, even complicated shows. So
yeah, it worked.
It was maybe an attitude thing. I mean, we played many festivals, and everybody took it so serious, but we only dropped the stuff and started playing soccer, you know. So of course the other guys were like, "Oh my God, they must be so good that they can do that." But we just didn't take it so serious.
Yeah. Why? I mean, this is in the middle of the 90s. Heavy metal is declared dead. I mean, the mainstream media doesn't care whatsoever, and still you released your best-selling album to date. Why do you think that happened?
It's just a high quality album. I think the music speaks for itself. It's a good album, completely independent of what the scene or the metal scene looks like, or what the media declares metal to be.
It was, from musical wise, I think it was more than one step ahead of everything else that happened at that time. It was the biggest movement, I think, from what we could do. It was really a blast and international wide appreciated at that time, because the focus was on new metal at that time. New metal was big.
No, it was even before new metal. I think it was still the end of grunge. New metal was
Grunge,
the end of
yeah.
90s.
Grunge.
Ah, okay, it was grunge. Right. It was grunge was really big, but we didn't care anyways. I mean, we only were looking to what we did, and but the album has such a high quality, and nobody expected this of us. We were already big enough with a Somewhere that people had the attention to listen to it, and then when they saw it was such an amazing album, it exploded. I think that was kind of natural then.
A thing that we didn't talk about yet is that Imagination chose the band with a much heavier approach. And I remember an old interview with you, Hansi, where you said that the riffing from Born in Morning Hall reminded you of Sepultura or Pantera. So
did I say that?
Yeah.
Oh,
So how important were those bands? Were they kind of important like Forbidden and Testament back in the 80s, or?
I would say, if not with Somewhere Far Beyond, then at the very latest with Imaginations, we went completely freestyle. And we had that intensity and this energy in us, and it was not anymore related to any other bands.
So this was a heavier approach, at least to the album, but also your singing style is maybe a little bit more harsh on the album.
That was desperation for sure. I remember when I did Another Holy War, which was the first song, and at the end of the day, and that never happened before, we didn't have anything useful on tape, even though I screamed the ass off. I went back the second day and was so insecure for the first time, because I really thought, well, I will not survive that day, because, you know, singing so intense for, I don't know, 6 or 7 hours, you know, is demanding. And then leaving the studio without a result does not help, and doing some drinking overnight doesn't help either. But both of it, I believe, you know, gave that extra crunch to it. And, you know, I somehow was able to be successful in the challenge of my nerves, and the result can be heard. But I said, if you listen back to the demo, it was already, you know, in the core songwriting. I think it was really our spirit.
And Andre, you once told that there were some problems with the backup of the recordings during the production, and you almost lost some material.
So I remember that we were recording on the high quality, state-of-the-art digital tape machine, a 20-track or 24-track Sony, and all the important stuff was recorded there, while we had some other slave machines running to have more tracks. And
Choirs, for example.
yeah, choirs, for example, right. And I think we were almost done with the recordings and
With the mixing.
even with the mixing, and some technical problem with that digital machine occurred, and the tape was stuck between the wheels, and it burned a hole in the tape. So there was a huge hole, and since it was a tape, it was not so easy to fix, and we listened to it, and it was a Mordred song, and everyone was shocked, because we thought we lose the whole song and we have to start all over again with the recordings. Our luck was that the hole was in the center of a chorus part, and of course we had recorded that chorus part 3 times, so we could bounce the recordings of the chorus part to another machine and bounce back something to repair everything. It took 1 or 2 days before everything was fixed again, and then we continued. But it was a huge shock, and I remember that for the first time of that production, Flemming Rasmussen was really pale in his face.
Another thing that happened during the recording that is a quite funny side story is what one day during the drum recording, the back door was suddenly kicked in. Tell us about this.
Tom was doing his performance, and we were in this not so nice neighborhood. There was a rocker gang, you know, having their headquarter, I think somewhere near the studio.
Yeah, and they were repairing cars there, customizing bikes, and
You know, with outside, and Tom, you know, he's a very intense player, so he got I don't know, a strong energy, and he was playing for 6-7 hours straight, and I believe it was either Systems Failing or Born in the Mall.
well, it was Born in the Morning.
was performing on, and obviously the guys didn't like what he was doing there, so they were tired of, you know, the noise. So all of a sudden the door crashed down, but Tom did not recognize, because that happened in his back, so he continued playing. And the guy moved around Tom and was standing in front of Tom, and Tom did not really realize where the guy came from, so he thought he would be one of the staff of the studio. So he kept on playing and smiling.
Yeah, you're like, huh? I'm good, right? Yeah, and the guy, he was so frustrated by the confident attitude of Toman that he really lost it and just went out again and left because he couldn't reach his goal. He couldn't make Tom stop playing. Okay. Well, yeah, and the door was smashed, and that sound that he really crashed the door is still in that recording, and I think we
You can
took
hear
it because that take he played was the awesome take. And
If you listen back just to the drum tracks,
if
you
you
can hear
only
it.
listen to the drum track, you can hear how the door is smashed.
Police came, the owner went back, you know, with really a lot of passion and aggression, you know, but the guys disappeared and, you know, they never could be found, which is probably good.
You
But they secured the door later on and it never happened again.
You just talked about systems failing. What was the reason that this was the only song that was not finished during that recording and which will be on the re-release now?
Yeah.
Because it was connected with that arm injury of mine. We lost lots of time and we were short on time because we moved in Bright Eyes instead. We said, okay, we have another written song by ourselves, so of course the focus is on our own material. And we always said, okay, if we have enough time in the end, we will finish it, but if not, not. It was the bonus song, really the bonus, and in the end we said now we would need a little bit more time for the mixing. We should be safe, so let's just not finish the recordings there, and maybe one day we will.
One day.
One day it came.
That was not the only cover version that you just started recording or did record in Copenhagen. What was the reason why it was The Wizard, Hallelujah, and
Mr. Sandman?
Or was
Mr.
it-
Sandman, right? Mr. Sandman and...
So what was the reason, or was it planned? Just
We-
wanted to have B-sides, or
Right, we believed in the potential of Imaginations and were sure it would be a big success, so I assume we were preparing stuff for singles.
But there was one person who was not too much in the cover versions, which was Fleming.
That's very true, yeah. It was not to his liking. He said, what a waste of time in general. But, you know, he was fine with, you know, doing the drum recordings and he did your guitars and your guitars. But when it came to singing, he just said, well, I can do it, but you better be good. And so I went into the room and the first one was The Wizard. And I sang it once and he said, yeah, great. Next one. Next one was the systems failing because, you know, I could do the singing. And same thing again, you know, I did the song, went in, sang it once. Okay, we're done. And it never ever happened again. I believe it would have been the same for the other two songs. I cannot even recall if he was involved in Hallelujah. He refused to record the vocals for Mr. Sandman. This song was simply too much for him. So I did that with his assistant engineer, Henrik Winneby, who took it very, very serious and who is a very, very nice guy and very talented as well. So I was bleeding a lot when doing the vocals with him because we had that idea for the song, which was very punkish. You know, there was all the anarchy we could bring up in, and he was so precise, and he, you know, he wanted to work on the harmonies and stuff like this, and we didn't even care. I think we found a pretty good balance, you know, in between what we have had in mind and, you know, where he wanted to lead me.
we spoke a little bit about the touring before, but you explained about the entire vibe when you went to Denmark and when you were in Denmark and it was party, and then you went on your biggest tour so far in '95 together with Nevermore, and we guess that the party continued, right?
No. No, it did not. The attitude changed a little bit, and we took it very serious. So I would say, even with regard to live performances, this was the moment when we switched into a more professional band. I mean, of course, there were some parties still, but it was not like in the heydays. It was not like the tours with Iced Earth we have had before, and nothing in comparison to what we did in Japan. So touring with Nevermore was, for us, you know, a very nice experience where we kept our focus on the performances themselves. We were not better than we were when we did Somewhere Far Beyond, but it felt better because we really kept our focus on these essential things.
I think when when the tour started, we had a rehearsal with the full setup of the full stage design.
Yeah.
In Munich.
And in Munich, there was in the venue everything was set up already, and we arrived there. And for the first time, we had this amazing stage design, and we were there like, oh, that's how the stage will look, and that's the light show, and the backdrops and everything, and we were really impressed. And I think at that moment we realized how big we became with touring, and that it was not a fun game anymore. We had to be serious. We had to take it serious. That was really something extraordinary big. And so I think at that moment we said, yeah, we have to be professional, no drinking, focusing on the shows because we have to deliver. There's all this, these people who work and who set up. I mean, it was only from the crew. Before we had only a few people, and then it was huge. There was like 50 guys running around setting everything up, and we were like, okay, so we better be good.
Yes, I remember also just for us as the roadies, it was the same time. It was like 3 days in Munich to rehearsal, and then there was like a powwow for the roadies. What's your job to do and what's not your job to do? So it became just bigger. I remember that it was huge.
But it did not last very long.
Yes, there was times in between. I was remembering you said, no, we stopped drinking, and I remember on Dortmund, there was a day off. Okay, it was a day off, and we traveled from Dortmund to
Wherever.
Leipzig, I think it was Leipzig, with everybody from the
caps,
from McDonald's, the caps, and there was also a big, with everybody had a cap on it, and it was just like kindergarten. It was, yeah, it was, but we had so much fun about it.
We also had the fantastic idea, you know, on tour, you have a lot of time to kill, you know, because obviously it's the gig in the evening, you do a sound check, maybe some interviews, but aside from that, you're waiting. So we thought, let's do some sports, and we all bought inline skaters and hockey equipment, and we were playing inline ice hockey, whatever you want to call it, in the venues because they were perfect, you know, and we were playing all day long like idiots, and everybody, you know, the promoter, and it was like, you can break your hands, then the tour is over. Everybody was pissed at us, and we didn't really care until you fell and almost broke your arm. Somewhere,
It was an accident between you and me.
Yes.
We were playing, and I was falling, and he was on my leg. Somehow he was falling on my leg, and I moved the other direction, and my leg was completely fucked up. And I remember, I think it was a show in Berlin.
It was Berlin.
And
We started.
It was like a huge venue, and we really had space to play. So we were playing really fast. We were really running faster and harder.
Yes.
And then we had that.
We had no helmets.
Nothing. And we had the terrible crash, and my leg was so injured I couldn't walk anymore. And the whole fucking show, I was standing at one point. Completely sorry that I couldn't move, and then I agreed to our tour manager that it's maybe a good idea to quit.
Yes, yeah, that's it.
Quit inline skating and playing hockey.
But the tour manager, that was the other point. So there was a lot of professional people with us, a huge traveling party, and they
For
say
the first time? Or?
no, it was much more bigger, and there was a lot of people. You can't do that, you know. We get unemployment if someone gets hurt.
Yeah.
And I say, yeah, it was an accident, never happened again. And the next show, just before the show, there was Henry, the tour manager, and they get the puck just on the eye.
Yeah.
So we had
You had to get stitches.
Nothing happened, just blood was everywhere, and we had to fix it. I said, nothing happened anymore.
I remember
Then we stopped it. Then we stopped it.
I think it was also in Berlin. We had a really fancy hotel. I don't remember which one it was, but it was a fancy, expensive hotel. And we said we checked in, and we said, okay, half an hour. We meet at the lobby. Everybody's prepared to play hockey, and obviously we all get dressed up in our rooms. And then we were going through the lobby, playing already, and we were almost kicked out of the hotel immediately. We didn't really give a fuck. We just had fun.
But at least we were not drinking anymore. So we just
Yeah,
had,
that was
we just had a
sports.
little fun. We just had a little fun. Come on.
We were doing sports.
Apart from the little wine.
Yeah,
and
I
the
mean,
beer
they said
here and there.
sport. They said sport is good. Come on.